Today we are looking at the one, the only Coldcard Mk4 Bitcoin hardware wallet. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist, and I'm excited to do this video. The Mk4 is the latest in CoinKite's Coldcard line of Bitcoin hardware wallets, and this is something that many of you have requested. And so today we are going to go through the full end-to-end tutorial, everything from setup to basic and more advanced use of the device. And we're also going to start off by talking about what's new with the Mk4 model. And I have to say there is a lot of great stuff, so you're not going to want to miss a thing. For those returning to the channel, welcome back, my friends. As always, it is a pleasure to have you. And for those new to the channel, I welcome you as well. If you like this type of content, I invite you to consider subscribing and join us in our growing merry gang in cyberspace. I cover all manner of Bitcoin-related content, including a whole slew of tutorials, how to acquire Bitcoin, secure it, privacy best practices, running your own node, and more. You want it, I cover it, and today's video is a great example of that. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in, and I want to first talk about what's new with the Mk4. All right, so there's actually pretty significant updates to the Mk4 model. For those of you who are curious, I have done a full tutorial on the Mk3, which you can check out if you are so curious. But the Mk4 really does level things up. CoinKite generally ships a new model every couple of years or so. And so some of the things that I think are most exciting about the Mk4 are, number one, upgraded secure elements. So there's actually dual vendors now, two different secure elements that are in this device. Well, it's got the same kind of calculator look, which is great for OPSEC. It's got a tougher case. It also has a better processor and memory, and this is actually really good for some of the more complex types of multi-sig transactions that are possible now. We've upgraded the main power-only cable to USB-C, which is, I think, the way the world is going more and more. They have some additional functionality with pins, so that you can do like a trick pin, which helps in a duress situation. You know, someone's pointing a gun at your head, forcing you to kind of log into your device and send them your Bitcoin. We've got more tools to pretend like you're doing that when in actuality you're not. As they always do, CoinKite is also very much on top of how the Bitcoin network itself has evolved. So with one of the latest firmware updates for the Mk4, they also have support for pay-to-taproot script, which is very nice. There's not a whole lot of usage yet with Taproot, but we will see more of that as we go forward. It can also very interestingly serve as kind of a USB disk drive. So this is really nice when dealing with partially signed Bitcoin transactions, which for those unfamiliar, we will talk about in more detail. One of the bigger pieces of new functionality is NFC, or near field communication compatibility. So for those not familiar, this is a short range communication method that uses radio waves actually. And this is the technology that you're using when you kind of tap to pay, like when you put your phone on a POS reader. And a lot of people have said, oh my gosh, isn't this a new attack vector? One, it's disabled by default, so you have to actively turn it on in order to use it in any way, shape, or form. And if you really don't want it at all, you can actually kind of scrape a little piece off in the kind of micro SD slot, which basically removes the functionality entirely, which is interesting. I think we're going to see more and more with NFC. For folks who are familiar with the SATS card, that's how that works. You can kind of load this little payment card up, and then it has NFC technology to be able to be used at POS card readers. And I believe it's also the case that Block's hardware wallet that they're developing for merchants will also operate with NFC technology. And in some ways, you could argue that it's a more secure, superior version than QR codes, which necessitate the use of cameras, and there can be some privacy considerations related to that. I mean, these are just basically, radio waves. Now, it's important to note that the data being transferred is not encrypted. That's generally okay because the type of information like addresses or potentially signatures to be applied to partially signed Bitcoin transactions. We're not going to really be diving into that feature too much today because you need other wallet providers to integrate this technology. Coldcard really is just kind of leading the way in this regard, but I do think we're going to see some very interesting stuff on that in the future. We can see a more complete comparison of those different pieces that I just rattled off in this handy diagram here. We've covered most of this. And for folks who might be newer to Bitcoin hard wallets, maybe you've been inspired by the absolute chaos that we've seen unfold over the last several months with different crypto lenders blowing up, right? Not your keys, not your coins. There's a reason people say this, and that has been a very tough lesson that many have now learned firsthand. So I don't know how many times on this channel I've said it, but hopefully now, if you haven't done so in the past, you are more motivated than ever to get your coins off exchanges, off third parties, and into your secure self-custody. So if that's you, obviously there's other offerings on the market, devices like Ledger, Trezor. Naturally, there's a question of like why Coldcard, and I would just generally say Coldcard is vastly ahead of either of those options, right? Not to say that they're bad options. I have a Ledger, I have a Trezor, I've done videos on both of those as well, but they do not compare whatsoever to Coldcard. Although it is this kind of interesting lineage, Coldcard did use some of the Trezor code, but has, built a lot more things on top of it. And the reason for that is Coldcard is Bitcoin only. They're focused on Bitcoin, and they've just thought of so many different kind of threat models, security risks, and really have a superior product. I mean, that's just full stop. Now, it will be interesting to do a comparison with the Foundation device's Passport. I've done a whole video on that device as well, and they are in the process of shipping their Batch 2 product, which will interestingly compared with a mobile app. And so you can see these two different approaches being taken by CoinKite and Coldcard on the one hand, and Foundation device's Passport in relation to making these devices interoperable with mobile wallets. This is a clear trend that we're seeing. And so it's pretty interesting to see these different takes. So again, if you're not subscribed, I encourage you to do so you'll be able to see some of those comparisons. As a user, it's great that we have such competition in the marketplace. All right, so there's probably a lengthier rundown than I had intended, but again, there's a lot of really cool stuff packed into this that I think folks should be aware of. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the unboxing and the setup process. First, you'd want to come to coinkite.com. This is where you can access the store. And so you'll see a number of different things here. But first and foremost, you will want the Mark IV, of course. And then you're also going to want to get some method by which to provide the device with power. And there's a couple options you can think about. One would be this USB-C for the Mark IV. So this is a power-only cable. Right? There's no data that can be transferred through this, and that is key. Coldcard is designed to be used in a way such that it's never transferring data directly via a direct connection with an internet-connected device. That is really key. And so these power adapters are power-only cables. Or if you're really paranoid, and this is what I will be using, you can grab their cold power adapter, which is really cool. And it's this little kind of device that will simply sit on top of a battery. Lastly, assuming you want to use this in a truly air-gapped fashion, you will want to grab a micro SD card. This is what we're going to use to pass data back and forth between Coldcard and a software wallet that we're going to pair the Coldcard to. Now, you can grab a micro SD from their store here, or you could probably find it a little bit cheaper. Basically, any high quality, like it could be a SanDisk micro SD, 32 gigs or below is what you want to grab. Some people like the steel-plated backups for kind of chiseling their seed word in, right? Because if you simply write it on paper, there's a fire, paper can burn. So there's some other bells and whistles that you can get. But again, the critical pieces you'll want are the Mark IV device, a power method, and then a micro SD. And you'll see there are some kind of basic, bundles that you can grab as well that kind of make it easy to get different things. Now, if you are going to do this, feel free to use my affiliate link that I will provide in the description down below. That really does help the channel, and it helps me do videos like this. As you can obviously see, these products I think are well worth the money, but they are also not cheap. Your support is always appreciated. and there's nothing extra or special you have to do in order to support the channel. Now, beyond those ingredients, we will also need a software wallet. And if you're brand new to Coldcard, you may say, what in the heck do I need yet another for? And it is because we are going to pair the Coldcard with a software wallet, because the Coldcard is specifically designed to not have its own sort of interface. For example, you might be familiar with like Ledger Live or whatever the equivalent, I forget its name, for Trezor is, where it gives you the kind of interface itself, and that is to reduce the attack surface. And so as we can see in this list, there's quite a number of compatible software that we can pair our Coldcard with. For today, we will be using my favorite desktop wallet, which is Sparrow. But there's also mobile wallets such as Blue Wallet on this list. I won't be covering the full setup of Sparrow because I've already done that in another video, and so do check that out. I will leave that linked in the description down below as well. You may be thinking, well, it sounds like an awful lot of setup, but I promise you it is worth it. If you're gonna do not your keys, not your coins, you might as well do it right. So that's the ingredient list. Let's go ahead and actually jump into it. All right, gang, let's get into it. So here we've got our Mark IV device secured in this tamper-evident packaging. We'll talk about some of the pieces to be on the lookout for there. I've got my cold power attached to the top of this battery, and I've got my micro SD that we're going to use for conducting partially signed Bitcoin transactions. You'll notice a couple things. It will have this ID that is unique, and we will see that reflected on the device itself shortly. This is a factory assigned number. Make sure it matches here at the top. You should see the packaging like this. There should be no evidence of kind of tampering or anything. It has this kind of not really a seal, like you can see the seals along the sides but not on the bottom. That is another kind of unique feature. But let's go ahead and get this open. If you do notice any tampering with your packaging, contact them at support@coinkite.com. All right, so that is indeed difficult to open, which is a good thing, but you've got the back all transparent, and you've got the Mark IV. Beautiful. Let's take this kind of outer plastic shell off. All right, and so there we've got it unsheathed. You can see the little directional buttons. I mean, it looks like, form factor wise, a calculator, which is why this is so great for OPSEC. You're fleeing your authoritarian country. They ask, what the hell is this? Sir, can't you see? It's a calculator. So now we're going to get this powered up. I realized I did need a new 9-volt battery, so I've got that. And again, the cold power little guy will sit nicely on top just like this. There we go. Quick word of recommendation, just as a sort of amendment to what we were discussing earlier in terms of the ingredients list. I would probably go ahead and get the USB-C for Mk4 power-only USB-C cable, because you're anyways, even if you have one of these older cables, you're anyways going to need the USB-C little sort of adapter to connect it into the Mark IV. And so the cold power adapter is then the optional piece if you want to be really paranoid, but you will want to get this, I think, either way, because again, you're going to need this little guy, right? This little magnetic USB-C kind of adapter piece. And that is what gets plugged directly into the top of the Coldcard. Like so. And then the other end of this plugs into the cold power. Here's the classic USB meme. You turn it around thousands of times. And then the little switch here is what turns it on. And so we can now see Coldcard booting up for the very first time. And the very first thing we're going to do is choose a pin. So the pin is super important. This is your line of defense. If someone were to ever come and get their hands on your device, right, the pin code is what stops them from getting into the actual device. So we're going to go ahead and hit choose pin code. And it'll give us a little example. So there's actually two parts to this. There's both a prefix and a suffix. That is important. It helps make a stronger pin. But also the prefix will help inform what are called anti-phishing words. And these 2 words will be words that get presented to you after you put in the first part of the PIN, right? And if you don't recognize those words for whatever reason, that means that somehow your device has been compromised. And so that is yet another kind of nice little security feature. So let's go ahead and hit go. It says, warning, there is absolutely no way to reset the PIN or factory reset the Coldcard if you forget the PIN. This is super crucial. As we will demonstrate in just a moment, you can nuke the seed, right, and then recover the seed phrase to the device, but the PIN will stay with the device forever. So do not forget the PIN, write it down, and that is part of why they give you the handy little card to do so. But use whatever method you feel most comfortable with. And again, it gives us more. Do not forget the PIN code. It actually requires you to press 6 to prove you read to the end of this message. So we'll hit 6. Okay, so now we're going to put in the PIN prefix. Both the prefix and the suffix can both be between 2 and 6 digits for a total of potential 12. Again, you want a strong PIN, so be thoughtful with this. I'm going to put this in off camera and we'll be right back. Now that I've put my prefix in, it has generated these 2 words, and these 2 words are unique to this device. And so there you have it, just paper. Pretty easy. So in the future, when I power this up and I put in my PIN, I put in the prefix and then it will display these words. If I don't see these words, that means something has gone terribly wrong. So I'm going to write these down as well, and then we're going to enter the rest of the PIN, so the suffix of the PIN. All right, so let's take a look at the different menu options here. So new seed words is what's going to use the inbuilt random number generator within the device to create our seed. If you've ever been curious for how that whole process works, how that then results in the ability to create addresses, what in the heck is your public key, how does that differ from your private key, I have done a whole video on that. So if you'd like to go into some of the gory depth there, I'd encourage you to check that out. We can also import an existing seed or backup via the second option. We are going to test that out in just a little bit. And there's a ton of different advanced pieces and settings that we'll check out near the end. But the very first thing we want to do is ensure that we have the very latest and greatest firmware installed on the device. So in fact, if I go to Advanced and Tools, I will see this second option as Upgrade Firmware. So I click into this, I can show the version that we're on. So we are on version 5.0.2. You can see the date, but I know that they're actually on 5.0.4. As you can see, I know it's a little bit small. We'll switch over to the laptop here in just a moment. So basically what we want to do is I'm going to get my micro SD card into my computer, and we're going to download and verify the latest firmware onto the micro SD, and then we're going to get that into the Coldcard so that we're on the latest and greatest. This is a general best practice. You don't need to obsess over this once you've kind of done this the first time, but would generally recommend doing this maybe a couple times a year just to ensure that you're not missing anything big. These can sometimes be bug fixes that are getting pushed out in these different releases. So let's go ahead and switch over to the laptop. All right, so I've got the micro SD plugged into my computer, and we are going to grab this latest firmware. I will link this page. There's a couple different ways to get to the latest firmware. You can always access it through this user guide where it says upgrade firmware. So again, I will put this in the description down below. And then I also want to call your attention to, if you go to the different chapters, you'll see this Coldcard Paranoid Guide, which you can see here. This was written by Econo Alchemist, who has a ton of great different tutorials on Bitcoin technology. I wanted to point this out because it has by far the best verification guide that I have seen for Windows. I have seen people with Windows struggle in a big way to verify Coldcard firmware. Now, the nice thing is that the device actually won't even run or process firmware that has not been signed by CoinKite. That is really, really nice. And so in some ways that dampens the need to do this. But again, I want to show the full-blown process for those of you who really want to not trust anything and you want to verify. For those who are new to this, really anything you download from the internet, whether it's software or firmware that you're going to later put on a different device, you ideally want to cryptographically verify that it is what you think it is and that it hasn't been posted by some malicious actor that somehow took over the website. Right? Some of that sounds far-fetched, but you just do not want to take chances with this stuff. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to download the latest firmware, and then we are going to ideally verify it. And I'm going to take you through the steps, but I just wanted to point you to this, and I will again also link this in the description down below. If we come back to the upgrade firmware, so I'm going to click on this to download this. So we've got the .dfu file in our downloads. We can scroll down and there is a portion where we can see the different verification steps. I think on Mac there are generally less issues with this, whereas on Windows I have generally seen more. I am using Windows, I know, but it is what it is. So again, I'll be walking through how to do this with Windows. If you are doing this on Windows, what you will want to grab is this handy app Cleopatra. This is what it looks like on the taskbar down below, and this is a part of GPG4Win, which you can access by going to gpg4win.org. I'll link this in the description down below. This basically gives you a package of different tools that allow you to cryptographically verify files and data. You can sign data and produce your own signatures. There's a lot of different things you can do with this, but mainly we want the Cleopatra app. So I've already downloaded this. So again, it's a pretty simple process. You would just download the latest version that you have. And a lot of people will say, well, wait a second, how do I, verify the verifier? You can go to this check integrity tab, and it has some different options by which you can check the integrity of these different downloads. So back to Coldcard, which is the mission at hand. So we're going to confirm two things: the hash of the file that we have downloaded, as well as verifying the PGP signature that is attached to it. So firstly, we're going to open this signatures.txt file, which we can do in a new tab. You will see that this is basically a series of hashes corresponding to various releases. So this 5.0.4 is the one that we care about. And so we are ultimately going to run a function that will produce a hash, and we're going to compare it to what we have here. All right, so I'm going to come down and I'm going to actually open PowerShell in this case. And what we want to do is grab this text. So this is the command we are going to launch. Now I need to get the actual file name as it is on my computer. So I'm going to come over to my downloads. Here is the file. I'm going to go to properties just so I can grab the full file path. So I've got this piece. There we go. Okay, and then I want the SHA-256 algorithm. So this is, I'm basically telling my computer to run the SHA-256 algorithm on this file, which is a unique set of data, and therefore it will produce a unique hash value associated with that data. And I'm then going to compare that to what we were just looking at. So let's go ahead and run this. You can see that I have this hash value. And so let's come back and compare it to what we have. And as we can see, they are indeed exactly the same. So that's great. That is step one complete. We have confirmed the hash associated with the file that we've downloaded is indeed aligned with what they've published in the signatures file. But we're not totally Loctite yet, and so what we want to also do is verify the PGP signature that has signed the file we just downloaded. And so we can see the first step is to actually save that file with this .asc file extensions. This is very important. Don't save it as a .txt, which is probably the default that Windows will grab. And so you can do this by coming over and right-clicking, saying Save As, and we'll plop it in our downloads, and we can change this to all files and add the .asc file extension to it. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit save. There we go, signatures.asc. We will also save this public key that was used to generate the signature. So we can open this in a new tab and save it as well as a .asc file. And so we've got lookup.asc. And then we're also going to open up this keybase.io file. So this, so Peter is on the CoinKite team. So let's boot up Cleopatra, which again we got from the GPG4Win software package. All right, so here is Cleopatra, and what we actually want to do first is come back over to the docx page. We're going to open up. Here's the public key. So we're actually just going to copy all of this onto our clipboard. And then Cleopatra has this handy ability to come to Tools, Clipboard, Certificate Import. So we're basically importing docx's public key so that we can certify it. And it says in order to mark the certificate as valid, it needs to be certified. Certified means you check the fingerprint. And so we're going to be doing this by confirming it on a trusted website. Do we wish to start this process? We do. And so we can indeed see there's Peter Gray, Peter at CoinKite. And if we come over and kind of move these around a little bit, we can validate that the fingerprint associated with what we've imported indeed aligns with what is publicly listed on the Keybase website. So that looks good. Let's certify that. And I'll put in my password that I set as part of the first time kind of installation and setup of Cleopatra. And there we go, certification successful. So now that we've got docx's key imported and certified, we can now verify that the signed message attached to the firmware that we downloaded was actually signed by docx. And so to do that, what we can do is actually come back to our downloads, and we're gonna right click on the signatures file, and we're going to go to more GPGX options, and we're going to say verify. And there we go. So Cleopatra has indeed confirmed that it is a valid signature by who we thought it was. The signature is valid. So beautiful. There we go. We have now not only confirmed the hash value associated with the file, but we have also verified the signature. Now, again, I know that probably feels like a lot, but this is an important step to get into the habit of doing. For those of you on Windows, hopefully you can simply follow those steps and achieve the same result. Again, if you're on Mac, Linux, etc., there are other instruction sets that should be pretty good. Again, I have seen less issues from folks with Mac and Linux than I have with Windows. Keep in mind, like, don't pull your hair out on this. It is a very good kind of paranoid best practice. But again, the Coldcard itself will not run firmware that has not been signed by the appropriate signature. So that is a nice kind of fallback plan. Alrighty, so with all that, let's come back to our downloads. So we're going to simply move the DFU file, this is the firmware, over into our micro SD file. So now that it's on our micro SD card, I'm going to pop the SD card out of the computer, and we will be back to the Coldcard. All right, so we are back. We've turned the Coldcard back on, put our pin in, and so now let's actually get the updated firmware in. So what I'm going to do is get the micro SD card that has the updated firmware file, and I'm going to put it into the device like so. And you should get a nice little click, just like that. And so it is now in the device. And if I come to Advanced and Tools, where we just were, and go to Upgrade Firmware, I can now select the From Micro SD option. It says Pick Firmware Image to Use. There is only one file to pick, so that is right. And there is the file that we pulled onto the microSD and verified. And it asks, do you want to install this? And it's upgrading. And you can see the updated version there. I'll put in my PIN. All right, and just to double, triply check that we are all good, we can come back down to Advanced Tools, go to Upgrade Firmware, and show the version, and there you have it, 5.0.4. So we are good. We've got our pin set, we've got the latest firmware, and now, my friends, it is time to create our seed. So we're gonna select new seed words. What I really like about the Coldcard is that it allows for user-generated entropy. So when we hit new seed words, we can see that by default, it will create a 24-word seed, but we also have these options to basically roll dice and input the results of those dice rolls such that we create our sort of own randomness if we don't want to trust the randomness that is within the Coldcard. Again, Coldcard's code is open source, so there's no reason to not do that, but again, if you want to be just super ultra paranoid, that is a really cool feature. We're going to go with the 24-word by default. And we've got our seed phrase. I'm not going to block this out in editing. I'm going to just blow this key up before actually using it. But it goes without saying, you would never, ever, ever want to share these secret words with anyone. And so you would want to write this down on a piece of paper or chisel it into a steel-plated backup card. Either way, do something where you know you are not ever going to lose your seed phrase. What's also cool is you can scroll all the way to the bottom here and you can still add like a couple dice rolls. So the prior options would have required you to roll a lot of different dice rolls. And so you can scroll down and hit 4 to add some dice rolls just to add a bit of extra entropy to the mix. Let's go ahead and do it. And so it says press 1 through 6 for each roll. So again, not best practice, but I'm just going to kind of make these up. Let's say a 2 and a 4 and a 1 and another 1 and a 5 and a 4 and a 1 and just kind of randomly hitting this. Okay, great. We're happy with that entropy we've added. Let's hit go. And so now it has generated a different set of 24 words based on the added entropy that I've added in addition to the random number generator within the device. So I'm going to write these down, and be sure to do that, not just for security purposes, but you're also going to be tested on this in just a moment. And so after you write it down, it's then going to quiz you. So get through the quiz, and then we'll be right back. All right, and so once you successfully run through the test, it says enable NFC/tap, lets you tap your mobile phone on the Coldcard and transfer data easily via NFC. You can change this later by going to settings, hardware on and off. So that's cool. It is not enabled by default, as I was alluding to earlier. And so you can choose to turn it on now, or if you wish, you can just say X. Let's go ahead and just say yes. So we've enabled it. And it's also going to ask if you want to enable your Coldcard to be this sort of USB drive. And so as it says, connect your Coldcard directly as a USB flash drive to your phone or desktop. You will be able to drag or drop partially signed Bitcoin transaction files like other drives and volumes. You can also change this later. So that's pretty cool. But again, for our purposes, we'll leave that off for now. It says disable USB port if you intend to operate in air gap mode where this Coldcard is never connected to anything but power. Then this will disable the USB port. That is right. That's what we want to do. All right. So we are in. We're ready to provide signatures with our Mark IV signing device. And so again, just to make it really clear, particularly for folks who might be a little bit newer to this, your private keys are now on this device, right? The private keys that have been derived from your seed phrase or your master seed. Those private keys are never going to leave this device. The only data that is going to leave this as it relates to your private keys would be the signature, right? When we sign, and that's obviously not your private keys themselves. And so that is why we need to pair this with a software wallet such as Sparrow, which is what we're going to do as part of today. But before we do that, I want to touch on just two other things. The first is this passphrase option. And what this is very crudely, you can think of it as a 25th word. And so this is just yet another layer of security. So for example, if I hit passphrase, you may add a passphrase in accordance with the BIP39 specification. This creates an entirely new wallet for every possible passphrase. So it's basically going to add that passphrase to the 24 seed phrase words to create and generate a unique wallet from which you can then create your different private public key pairs. I think this is a good move if you have, just a ton of funds that you're storing on this. But do be careful, because if you set a passphrase and then you move a bunch of funds to that, well, number one, if you forget the passphrase, obviously that's bad. You're never going to get to your funds again. And if you put that passphrase in incorrectly into your Coldcard, you won't produce valid signatures to be able to send funds out of that wallet. The flip side of that is that this is actually a really good potential duress tactic, right? You could have a made up passphrase where, if someone accosted you in real life and you for some reason had this device on your person, you could basically just know in your head that you have this kind of fake passphrase and you put that in, and maybe that's associated with a couple sats, but it's not all that much. So that's another interesting way that you might use passphrases. By default, the Coldcard will use an empty string as the passphrase, and that's what most wallets do. And on the next menu, you can enter a passphrase by entering all sorts of combinations and stuff. So let's actually do two things. I'm going to come out of that real quick. Let's hit cancel. And let's go to Advanced Tools, and let's go to View Identity. And so we have this master key fingerprint. Okay, so take note of this, AF, 01, blah, blah, blah. Now, if we were to come back and put in a passphrase, so let's do that. Let's edit the phrase. Let's say, let's just say something like 1, and then you move from left to right to make this longer. Let's just make it, very simple. Let's do 1, 1, and 1. And let's just literally set that as our passphrase. And so we've edited the phrase, and now if we come and hit apply, it's going to apply that passphrase, and we now have this completely new master key fingerprint. So this is a new wallet. It says press X to abort this and keep editing the passphrase, or we can hit OK to use the new wallet. And so let's hit OK. And so again, you can come down and go to Advanced Tools, and you will see in the View Identity option that we've got that totally new master key fingerprint. So again, I'm generally of the mind that passphrases are good, especially if you have a lot of funds that are going to be associated with this signing device. But at the same time, I personally probably wouldn't make it that complex, because again, you're going to have to enter that every single time you want to do something within the Coldcard. Now, the other thing we want to do before we do anything, before we get any funds associated to this, is we want to create some backups. So we've got our seed phrase written down. That is very good. But we can also come down to Advanced Tools and hit this first backup option. I think it keeps getting a little bit blurry. So we can hit backup, and this backup system option, if we hit go, will give us a 12-word backup, as we can see here. So we can write that down as well. And so what this is doing is it's creating an encrypted backup file. So those 12 words that we just wrote down, an additional 12 words, serve as the key to get to this backup.7z zip file that has now been written to the micro SD card. So that's yet another nice way to back everything up. Again, you always want to write down your seed phrase in a safe and secure spot in which no one will ever get it, but you can also have this encrypted backup file as well. Now, lastly, we're going to do something that I think is a great best practice to get in the habit of. For a lot of folks will feel scary, but the whole point of doing this is before we put any funds into our wallet. And that is totally blowing up the seed, wiping this device. Again, remember that the pin will not be wiped, but we can wipe the seed entirely from this device, and we are then going to restore from our written down seed phrase. So the way we do that is we can, again, come down to Advanced Tools. And if we scroll all the way down to Danger Zone, let's go into the danger zone. You've got some different things, some developer options. We want to go to seed functions, and we can view the seed words. So that is a way to come back to this if we need, but we're going to destroy the seed. Wow. It says, are you sure? Question mark, exclamation, question mark. Wiping seed words and reset the wallet. All funds will be lost. You better have a backup of the seed words. Yes, we are daring. Are you really sure though? This action will certainly cause you to lose all funds associated with this wallet unless you have a backup of the seed words and know how to import them into a new wallet. Press 4 to prove you read to the end of this message and accept all consequences. Let's hit 4. Boom. So we have wiped it. So again, we're going to put in our PIN to re-enter. And once we've done that, you'll see we are on the new screen again. And so to practice importing an existing seed, we can go to the second option. Now, in this particular case, given that we do have the backup file, we could do the restore backup option, which would then have you put in those 12 words that are encrypting the backup file. So you could do it that way. But let's say for whatever reason, maybe you not only lost your Coldcard somewhere, right? It's at the bottom of the ocean. You had a terrible boating accident in actual reality, and you lost the micro SD that had your backup file. But fortunately, you had the seed written down. And so we can go to the 24 words option. And so this is a very tedious process, but for word 1, so, let's go down to S. What's nice is the more you do this, the more it winnows down because there's only a fixed set of words that can possibly be seed phrases. Again, check out that video I mentioned previously for the whole process on how that actually works. But we were looking for SP, and we've got spoil. We've got our first word. Now, I'm going to repeat that for the remainder of the 24 words. Again, seems very tedious, but I think it is a great practice to get in the habit of practicing blowing up your seed. Again, the situation could be you totally lost your device and you bought a new Coldcard, and now you're importing that old seed onto it. So I'm going to do that, and we'll be right back. All right, so just for you, I've absolutely painstakingly put the 24 words back in. And let's get it applied. And again, it's going to ask us those same things. So we'll say yes to this and no to this. All right, and we're back. And we can verify that we're back by going back to the view identity. So I haven't put that passphrase in again. And so there is that AF01, right, which aligns with what we had before. And again, if I wanted to use a passphrase, I can certainly do that. And let's put in our highly nuanced 1, 1, and 1. Boom. And let's apply this to the wallet. So at this point, we haven't even sent funds anywhere, but you are a true champion if you have gotten to this point. So we've basically powered on the Coldcard for the first time. We've chosen a great PIN. We've got our anti-phishing words. We've downloaded the latest firmware and have verified it. We've created a seed. We practice adding our own entropy. We practice adding a optional passphrase. And we've even practiced blowing it all up, modeled the situation in which we lose our device, and we have restored the seed to the device. So that is just jolly. I'm actually going to abort this for the rest of this demo, so I'm not going to proceed with a passphrase, again, just for purposes of keeping things a little bit easier. So we are now ready for the fun stuff. We are going to receive some funds as a first step, and this is where a lot of people get confused. So again, keep in mind, your seed and corresponding private keys are stored on this device, and they will never leave that device. What will leave are things like our public keys, right? Our master public key, as well as signatures, as we will later demonstrate. And so we need to pair this up with wallet software that allows us to visualize things like our balance, that allows us to receive funds, etc. And so what we're going to do is export the public key of the wallet, right? So what we can do is come down to Advanced Tools, we already did our backup, and we'll hit Export wallet. It gives us a number of different options. So you've got Bitcoin Core, you've got Electrum, Wasabi, Unchained Capitals. What we want is the generic JSON. That is going to allow us to import into Sparrow. And you can also grab the XPUB or the extended public key. So let's go to the generic JSON option. We will hit yes. And this will save a JSON file with XPUB values that are needed for, and this is important, for a single signer UTXO. We are later going to show the process for doing the same thing except for multisig. So again, we're keeping it simple, at least initially. We're going to export this Single-Sig XPUB. The file created is sensitive in terms of privacy, but should not compromise your funds directly. And this means that if someone got their hands on your extended public key, they could see information such as your balance, right? Which is public on the blockchain. But it's not going to provide or reveal, you can't backwards engineer into the private key, which would actually allow someone to move the funds themselves. So that's all clear. So account number is a construct in the kind of hierarchical deterministic wallet construct that most modern wallets use. I'm just going to kind of advance this. And so here we do see an example of where that NFC comes into play. Press 3 to share the generic export file over NFC. We're not going to do that. We are going to just hit OK to proceed normally. And so we have written coldcard-export.json on the microSD card. So we are now going to pop out the microSD card and we're going to get it back into the computer, and I'm going to fire up Sparrow Wallet and we will pair up our Coldcard device with Sparrow, and we're then going to receive some funds. So I've booted up Sparrow Wallet. Again, I've done a whole video on Sparrow Wallet as well, including connecting it to my own Umbrel node. And so if that is of interest to you, do check it out. Inherently, when you do anything related to the Coldcard, you naturally do need to know a little bit about the wallet software that you're pairing it with. And so you will see a lot of Sparrow today, but in terms of that very, very initial installation process and connecting it to your own node if you wish, you can check that other video out for how to do that. I've also got my microSD card plugged back into the computer, and you can see the coldcard-export file. That is what we just created. Don't be thrown off by the fact that the date modified is going to be associated with the date, I believe, probably the firmware maybe. In any case, don't be thrown off by that. And then indeed, there is the backup zip file that we also took a download of earlier. So great, we've got our Coldcard export file that we just did. Let's come back over to Sparrow, and we are going to create a new wallet. We're going to name it the Mk4 Demo. Beautiful. And so it's going to present us with some initial settings. Do we want single or multi-sig? In this case, we want single. I'll come back and do a multi-sig setup in just a moment. We are good to leave this as native SegWit. Although, as you will see, they have also integrated Taproot as well, which is cool to see. And then it provides us with a couple different options. So there could be a connected hardware wallet. This would be something like a Trezor that you would plug directly into your computer. Or it could be a air-gapped hardware wallet, such as the Coldcard that we're doing in our case. If you wanted to just play around with Sparrow a bit, independent of your Coldcard, you could also just do a new software wallet. That option would allow you to just create a essentially hot wallet within Sparrow. So we're doing air-gapped hardware wallet, and we are going to import the file for the Coldcard. And we'll come over here. Here's our Coldcard export. We'll hit open. And indeed, we can see the same exact master fingerprint that we would expect. We've got our imported XPUB or extended public key, and we are all good. So let's go ahead and apply this. It gives us the option to add a password to the wallet. So this is going to encrypt the wallet data that is being stored locally on your computer. You absolutely definitely want to put a password in for this, not to be confused with the passphrase, which is a Bitcoin native concept. Again, this password is in relation to Sparrow data on your computer. For now, just because this is a demo and I'm going to throw all this away afterwards, I'm just going to hit no password, but definitely put one in if you're doing this for real. All right, so now we can move on to some of the other parts of Sparrow. So we can come to our transactions view. This is where we're going to see our different transactions. The send option is where you can craft a transaction to send out. We are going to receive some funds. We will see in just a moment. And we also have our little address explorer. And this is actually a really important step that you want to do before receiving any funds. We want to actually verify that indeed we have the same addresses linked up and shown in our Coldcard. So I'll throw up the Coldcard just so we can compare in real time. And I'll go down to Address Explorer. I'll hit check. And again, it says the following menu lists common formats for addresses. And this is all fine. Oh, I guess I have to verify something that I read it. Warning, please understand that exceeding the gap limit of your wallet or choosing the wrong address on the next screen may make it very difficult to recover your funds. Okay, fair enough. So press 4 to start or 6 to hide this message forever. So I'll hit 4 to start. And so as you can see, it's presenting me with different script type addresses. So the first one is legacy format. The second is nested SegWit. The third is native SegWit, and so on and so forth. And so what I want to do is come down, because I've imported this as a native SegWit wallet into Sparrow, I want to compare this one. And as we can see, it is indeed aligned. And so that is great. Sparrow is showing the same first address in my list of addresses as is being displayed on the Coldcard. That is very good. If you wanted to, you could click OK here, and you could actually save this off into a file where you could then verify a broader or longer list of addresses if you really wanted to. We're not too worried about that, given that the first address aligned, and so that is all good. But we can see that full address here for us to verify, and indeed it aligns exactly with what's being displayed in Sparrow. So we have successfully paired the Coldcard with Sparrow. So it is finally time to receive some funds. So all you need to do is go to the Receive tab to display either the address that you can copy to a clipboard, or it also presents the QR code that you can scan using another wallet. And that is indeed what I'm going to do. I'm going to use, I'm in my Blue Wallet application here on my phone. This is a great option for a mobile wallet. And so I'm going to come in to my on-chain Bitcoin wallet, and I'm going to send some funds, and I'm going to scan the QR code, and boom, there you go. Let's change this to sats. Maybe we send something like, I don't know, 100,000 sats. And we'll go ahead and hit next. And I'm going to go ahead and send the Bitcoin. So that has now been broadcasted from my Blue Wallet. And indeed, I see I've got a new mempool transaction that is pending. And so I can come over to my transactions, and I can see I've got this unconfirmed transaction of 100,000 sats. So let's give this just a moment to confirm on the blockchain, and we will be right back. Right, so we are in business. We have got a confirmation on our 100,000 sats. And so again, I'm trying to reach a pretty wide range of folks with this video. So if you are a little bit newer to Bitcoin, it's important to understand that, you know, these 100,000 sats, like, they're not stored on any particular device, right? So if I go to my addresses, this address is now holding 100,000 sats, and that's on the blockchain. That is on the shared distributed ledger that nodes around the world can look at. And you can go to a block explorer and, you know, see, anyone can look this address up and see, you know, there's 100,000 sats that are associated with it. That 100,000 sats is not really stored in any particular device. It is on the blockchain. It's on the data structure that is the blockchain. But in order to move these 100,000 sats, we need to prove our ownership of the private keys that generated the public key, which generated this address, right? So it is our ownership of our private keys, which are stored on a device, our Coldcard, that will allow us to move this. If anyone else were to gain access to our private keys, they could also move our funds. Within Sparrow, you also have this UTXO tab. So UTXO stands for unspent transaction output. Given the transaction structure and sort of accounting structure of Bitcoin, you have inputs that come into transactions and then unspent transaction outputs. And so this is important for things like coin control, which is to say, if I were to have, 3 other individuals send me Bitcoin, I would see each of those pieces separately. And particularly when it comes to things like coin join or collaborative transactions that help obfuscate ownership of coins, it's a privacy technique in practice that becomes important. What's really cool about Sparrow is it's got Samurai Wallet's Whirlpool coin join implementation built in. Although you have to do that on a hot wallet, you can't do that on a cold wallet. But I just wanted to mention the UTXOs tab, coin control, etc. And so let's now send it. So we've received some sats and we can now send some sats. And so on the send tab of Sparrow, we've got a couple different pieces here. We're going to put an address in the pay to. We can give it a label that's just for our own kind of record keeping, and we will specify the amount as well. Now let's see if I can get this camera to work. Okay, so I did get it. Again, that's just a receive address that I'm presenting from my Blue Wallet. I'm just going to do a quick verification to ensure it is exactly right, and it is. And so again, just call this demo if we want to add a label to it. And we can send the max amount. So there's the sats that we have less the fee that we are going to pay in order to get this confirmed on the blockchain. And you can drag and drop this around, right, to higher, lower priority. And then you get the anatomy of the transaction that's going to be happening. So, so you have the amount that's being sent to my Blue Wallet in this case, and then you have the fee. Now, we're spending everything out of our wallet here. If we were only spending a partial amount, you would also have a change amount that gets returned back to the wallet. So this all looks good. Let's go ahead and create the transaction. And so again, we can see that anatomy replayed back. Let's go ahead and hit finalize transaction for signing. We've got the correct signing wallet of our Mk4 demo. And now is where things get interesting. So because we're using our Coldcard in a fully air-gapped fashion, we basically have to export the transaction details from Sparrow and then import that via our micro SD card into our Coldcard, where we will apply our signature. So what I'm going to do is go to save transaction, and I'm going to save this to our micro SD. And let's go ahead and hit save. And so what that's done is it has saved what's called a partially signed Bitcoin transaction, which is simply a bit of data that contains the details of the transaction, which will allow my Coldcard to interpret what it is sending. All right, so I have got my micro SD out of the computer. I'm putting it back into the Coldcard. And so let's go ahead and say ready to sign. So we are now going to use our private keys. They're on the Coldcard to apply a signature to this partially signed Bitcoin transaction data file. So let's go to ready to sign, reading, validating, and it has correctly read in the details of the transaction. Now, if there were multiple partially signed Bitcoin transaction files, it would present the menu of options that you can choose from. But since I only have one partially signed Bitcoin transaction file on the micro SD, it has correctly plucked that right in. And I see that indeed I'm trying to send 97,000 and some change sats to this address, which looks exactly right. I've got the network fee that I'm paying. And so we can go ahead and hit OK to approve this transaction. And it is signing. And so now we have a signed file as well as a finalized transaction ready for broadcast demo-final.txn. So that is great. We can now take the micro SD back out of the Coldcard and get it back into the computer. All right, so we're in the final stages of getting this transaction finalized. So again, just as a recap, we used Sparrow to construct a transaction. We exported it and got it into our Coldcard to apply our signature. And now we can load that signed transaction from our USB drive or from our micro SD card. And there is that demo-final signed transaction. And so as we can see, we've correctly applied the signature, and we can go ahead and broadcast the transaction to the Bitcoin network. And there we go. We've got an outbound transaction of 100,000 sats that is unconfirmed. And if we come back to our wallet, we can indeed see that that is going out. So we have done the full cycle of a Single-Sig wallet, receiving Bitcoin, sending it, using partially signed Bitcoin transactions. Now I want to talk through a multi-sig setup, multi-sig standing for multi-signature, and that is simply a wallet that requires multiple signing devices in order to spend funds. And so today we are going to set up a 2 of 2 multi-sig with our Coldcard as well as our Trezor device. So first and foremost, we need to, similar to how we exported the Coldcard wallet at the start, we're going to do that same thing, except this time for multi-sig. So I've got the micro SD back into my Coldcard, and I'm going to come down to settings in this case, and I'm going to go to multi-sig wallets. And so as we can see, it correctly says none set up yet. Now we will be importing something in just a moment, but for now, we're going to export our extended public key. You may say, well, I thought we just did that. But this is an extended public key for multi-sig. So your same wallet, your same device is capable of producing public and private keys for all these different types of use cases. So let's go ahead and hit export XPUB. This feature creates a small file containing the extended public keys you would need to join a multi-sig wallet. And that looks great. Again, we've got the account number. We can just proceed. And again, you're seeing, I'm not explicitly covering the NFC piece, but you've seen in various situations where there's some data to be shared, it's kind of prompting you with the option to use NFC if you wish. So again, that's nice. Okay, so we've got the multi-sig XPUB written to ccxpaf0 blah, 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 .json. So that is good. So now let's take the micro SD out and put it back into the computer. All right, so we've got the micro SD back into the computer, and so now we want to come and create a new wallet. Let's say multi-sig, demo, Mk4, and Trezor, something like that. So we'll hit create wallet, and instead of single signature, we are going to, of course, do multi-sig. We'll leave the script type as is, and you can see this little kind of scaling tool where you can configure the type of multi-sig. So it's expressed in M of n terms, meaning there are M required signers of n total signers, right? And so, it defaults to 2 of 3. In our case, we're just going to do a simple 2 of 2. So we're going to require 2 signers for the multi-sig. And now we're going to populate the 2 stores. So in one case, we're going to go ahead and import our air-gapped hardware wallet. So I'll come to Coldcard Multisig, and I've got this file, right? That was the multi-sig XPUB. So I'll open that. Indeed, it's got the fingerprint I would expect, and it's got the extended public key with the correct derivation path. That all looks good. So this is Coldcard. Now let's flip over to the second, and we are going to connect my Trezor device. And I am now going to click Connected Hardware Wallet. And I'm going to hit Scan, and it has correctly identified my Trezor 1. I'm going to say Unlock. And I'm going to input my PIN. And it's verifying the PIN. There we go. It's asking for my passphrase. I do not have one, so I'm just going to set it there. I guess I need to toggle this off. Sure. All right, there we go. So I'm going to import the key store. So in the case of Coldcard, given that it's fully air-gapped, we needed the data file to do this. In this case, my Trezor 1 is simply connected, so the Sparrow wallet is reading that in directly. And there we go. I've got my Trezor 1, XPUB as well, and now I can hit apply. I'm going to leave no password for now, but again, as discussed earlier, you would definitely want to add one in reality. So I'll say no password. And so there we go. So same deal, right? We've got all the same kind of options that we saw earlier, but we're going to have to do one final thing as part of the setup. So if we come back to settings, the Trezor, given that it's directly connected to this, right, it can pass information back and forth kind of immediately. But we need to inform the Coldcard of the multi-sig setup that has been created. And so if I come to this bottom left option where it says export, I can hit export. And here is the Coldcard multi-sig option. So I'm going to export this file and save it onto my micro SD card. And so I've now exported that, which contains the details, including the other XPUB for the other cosign. Again, this is just required for the Coldcard, given that it's air-gapped and it can't otherwise get that information. And so we've got the micro SD back in our Coldcard, and we can now go to import from file. Okay, fun fact, I realized part of this wasn't recording. So a couple things. Make sure, I was getting an issue with the length of the file name. So I think it can only be up to 20 characters is what I was seeing. So I basically just renamed the file from Sparrow to something shorter. Also ensure that the file is saved as a text file. Otherwise the Coldcard won't pick it up. And then you would go to import from file. And again, choose the appropriate file. In this case, this one. And that's basically all I did. Again, just neglected to have the second camera running. So we can now see the 2 of 2 multi-sig instead of the none setup, which was previously what we saw. And so we're now good. So in similar fashion, we are going to receive some funds to our multi-sig wallet. And so similar to what I was doing earlier, I'm just going to use my blue wallet again and scan to the address. I'm going to double check the address to make sure it is all good, and it looks good. Sig demo, and let's again do 100,000 sats. There we go. And let's crank this up just to make sure. This is a crazy, I guess the mempool is a little bit busy today, but whatever, that's fine. So go ahead and hit next and send the Bitcoin. And in a similar fashion, we see the new mempool transaction. So we've got the 100,000 sats that is now pending, awaiting confirmation. And so let's give that a little bit of time and we will be right back. All right, as we can see, we've got our first confirmation on our transaction of 100,000 sats that has been received to our multi-sig wallet. And same as last time, we want to now send those sats out. So again, I'm going to turn this camera option on, and there we go. I'm going to verify that this is all indeed good, and it is. A little label, and let's again send all the sats. Let's go ahead and create the transaction, and this looks good. You can finalize transaction for signing. And so this is where things get fun. Now we've got to apply both signatures, as we know. And so let's first hit sign. And we've got our unlocked Trezor 1, so we can go ahead and apply the signature there. And as you can see, and it's a little bit tough, let's see if we can get this in focus. But anyway, we can see indeed the details of the transaction that we are looking to send from the multisig. So let's go ahead and hit confirm. There's lock time, that's fine. It says really send from your wallet, fees included. Yes, we like it. And as we can see, we've got the Trezor 1 signature that has been applied. And so now, you guessed it, to get the Coldcard signature, we need to once again save the transaction. And so this should be fine. Multisig demo, it's going to save that as a partially signed Bitcoin transaction. And so I'm going to get this back into my Coldcard. All right, so we'll get this back into the device. And I'm going to come back and say ready to sign. So it has correctly identified that there are now 2 files, so we need to pick the right one. And there's our multi-sig demo. Reading, validating, and it is playing back the correct details. Address looks good, network fee looks good. And so it is now applying the appropriate signature for a multi-sig transaction. And so we've got it updated. We've got the, in this case, partially signed. It doesn't actually know that the Trezor has already signed, but that's okay. So that's great. Let's go ahead and get this out and back into the computer. All right, and as we did last time, we'll go to load transaction. We'll get our file that we just did. So this is the multi-sig demo partially signed transaction. We'll open that up. And there is the Coldcard signature that has been applied. We'll go ahead and hit broadcast. And there we have it. We have successfully received and now sent by applying 2 signatures from 2 separate signing devices for our multi-sig wallet. And we can see that outbound transaction is now in the process of getting confirmed on the blockchain. So there you go, my friends. I mean, if you followed along here, you are on a totally different planet when it comes to Bitcoin security versus the vast, vast majority of people who are currently walking this earth. So congratulations there. Again, take this stuff in stride, take it step by step. There are a couple of different advanced features that we didn't yet cover, so I just want to quickly kind of talk about a couple things. Address Explorer we covered. Secure logout is just to kind of log the device out in a secure way before, I mean, you can just yank the power, but I guess secure logout is a slightly better practice. Some of the other advanced tools we didn't necessarily look at. We talked through these first couple. You've got some pretty interesting things here, including things like paper wallet. So this can let you create another seed that you would just not necessarily have on the device, but that you could have as a paper wallet. We talked about the danger zone. There's some user management now, which is very cool. And then in the settings option, you can do different things. Recall that the hardware on-off is where you can go in to toggle some of the settings related to the NFC features. We talked about multi-sig wallets. You can change the units of how Bitcoin or sats are displayed when you're looking at the different transaction data. You can set max network fees and different things like that. You can clean some things up with the partially signed Bitcoin transactions. And even then, there's a few bells and whistles that we haven't quite discussed. But I think that is probably more than enough for one day. So to recap, we went over how to set up the Coldcard Mk4 from scratch, including downloading and verifying the latest firmware, setting a robust PIN, creating our seed, adding manual entropy, adding an optional passphrase. We blew up the seed and re-imported it to the wallet. We took a look at receiving and sending funds both in a single-sig and multi-sig setup. And so again, my friends, you are in an absolutely elite group if you are using these practices for your self-custody. With that, let's go ahead and close today's video out. There you have it. As alluded to at the outset, the Mk4 is indeed a beast. It preserves a lot of the great design elements from the Mk3, but it really does meaningfully add in terms of security as well as usability. I'm really curious to see how the NFC stuff continues to develop. But as always, CoinKite demonstrating that they are among the very best in the business. Curious to hear, what are your thoughts? What do you think of the Mk4? Have you used one? Have you used a prior model like the Mk3? Are there other hardware wallets that you actually prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you found this valuable and instructive. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like, share it out. That really does help with the algorithm, and it helps get this in front of more people. Again, I think there's still far too many folks who have left their coins on exchanges and other third parties, and as we have seen, that can pose massive issues. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm going to be covering some exciting things here in the near future. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave this here. As a reminder, every sat counts, especially if it's locked deep in cold storage. And until next time, I'll see you then.